DAOist Meetup. This is like the first, I wouldn't say independently organized because it was Luke, but it's us still trying to branch out and find what are the different modalities we can bring people together. So I would like to know kind of from like who has been to a DAOist before or is kind of aware of the DAOist in general in this crowd. Okay, so pretty much everyone. So I will invite you guys, this presentation kind of wraps up what happened over the last 6 months and where it's kind of going. If it's repetitive or boring according to your collateral baggage, let me know, because I'll just speed through it and we get to the area of like just being together and have panels and having interactive stuff, which I find more interesting than explaining. But at the same time, so much has happened that it might actually be useful for you guys to be able to take ownership of this shared narrative and build stuff with it, that I get everybody kind of updated on what's going on, right? So this is the me. Like, okay, we have lots of collectives. We have lots of groups of people coming together to take a stab at solidifying a way of doing things, be it in ReFi, DeFi, normal companies, Web2. At the same time, we're all sharing this shared commons resource that is the most scarce of all, which is human time and attention, right? And the ideas that survive are the ones that kind of are able to impregnate as many consciousnesses as possible and then replicate and go forward. But we don't have that many initiatives that sees themselves as connectives, right? So I'm here to make the case that the DAOist is meant to be a connective and not a collective, and to explain what that means to us, and maybe seduce you to identify within your actions where you can be more connective than collective, and allow for resource flow. And then answering the question from the last panel, where does value come from? What is value? For me, one suitable answer is when resources change state or hands, generating experience or possibility that wasn't there before. So value is kind of a quantification of resources in flow. And flow is an important concept. Go, moving forward. So I do feel like when I am a person who has a background in arts and social practice, and part of my knowledge background is to know about lots of art movements and political movements and how they talk to each other. And I feel that movements that are born in the fringe, creative movements that are about what is a well-lived life and challenge the status quo of a well-lived life, that are often formed around groups of creatives that are deploying their human attention over several fields like theater, painting, poetry, dance, music, things like this. Oftentimes, if you trace the origin of important political and world-changing ideas, they will often find their seed in these groups of fringe creatives that somehow find their way into the center. You can think of ideas around this if you just sit with it for a second, from the surrealists to the impressionists. Oftentimes, the first moment where something is born is in painting, which is maybe one of the most subtle and less useful, practically useful of the arts, which is actually my background. But so I feel that we as Web3 should allow ourselves to see ourselves as a movement, a cultural lifestyle movement that has a technological backing. It's hard to see this right now, but at every 6 months, which is kind of 10 years in crypto, it gets easier to see this, right? And the way mainstream reacts to this, it's befoed. It's like, this is cool, this is terrifying. This challenges everything that we have been compromising for. My 30 years in this accounting firm where I've set a constraint for the life I want to live, and then this guy comes and changes everything, and now it's really hard for me to be incentivized to unlearn and deconstruct so I can take part. So the movement is mainly young most of the time, or people who didn't have that much to lose. But as we progress, we see the inflow of those more established players that have their particular way of understanding our memes, and we're right at the cusp of this clash of waves at the moment. I feel it really strongly. And these two systems, they mingle through threat and seduction, and I think these are two important words. It's like, it's a sweet and sour approximation of two competing but also shared visions of what a possible way of living is. And we should not compromise on that one specific, the things that we call the Web3 way, right? Another important concept for how the DAOist sees the process of affecting what are life possibilities of a life well lived is that it's different than change. When I say transformation is different than change, how does it sit with you? Does anybody have like a first impulse of something? Yeah, go for it. Cool. So like I can totally change this chair from here to here and then change it back from here to here. But if the chair is transformed in its composition completely by some form of process, I will not be able to make it back into a chair, right? And you cannot implement, rush, you cannot just install a transformative process, right? You can't go from seed to tree. You need the seedling, you need the process of solidification of the stalk, and then da-da-da. There's transformative processes that have to happen. There's no benchmark. Right? There's no right way or wrong way for a tree to grow. It's contextually navigating its environment through threat and seduction, really, from the impulses and the inputs that it gets, and it just grows the direction that seems most available. And that's kind of where we're going, right? So what I'm going to provide as a grounding northern star for the idea of the DAOist as a connective, it's a social sensing and broadcasting system between a certain set of polarities that I'm going to present here. And it's a place for us to come and sit together and assess, sense, adjust, perceive, and then act, right? Act in our own collectives, right? The connective acts as an agora, as a in-between space where we can constructively disagree in a loving way, and from there, try to just go and do our things, right? So polarities, flow and control, right? In a complete state of flow, there would be no river because it would just disappear. You need a constraint, you need a basin, you need a space for it to flow. So learning how to sense the presence of flow and control and to give in or take hold in given moments is one of the guiding polarities, right? Relationships over structure for the DAOist is an important, so you see my bias here. We need a little bit more flow than control for transformative processes to take hold, because it's, if you just control, all you do is bake the cake. And you know how to bake the cake, right? You don't have experimental bakery, right? You just put a certain amount of flour, a certain amount of butter, a certain amount of eggs, a certain amount of this, you get the same cake. Transformational processes don't work like this. They need space for controlled failure, or experimentation, or search and self-destroy. Seek and self-destroy is a good one, I'll make a shirt. So another important polarity that I think complements that one is to be focused on relationships over structure, right? If I come up with a bunch of rules for how we relate, I don't have to relate to you. There are set rules, you follow the rules, I follow the rules, I don't have to understand you. I don't have to understand how you were hurt before. I don't have to empathize with what's in your soul and what's been bugging you. What is the unsolved questions in your own mind that you're afraid to admit to me that have actually been influencing the way you've been treating me like shit? For example, you've been there. It happens. So having unresolved relational space for productive but chivalrous conflict is part of this game, the connective game. Or I'm proposing. And if you disagree, let's have a beer, let's think about it. And then process over product. And this one I get a lot of pushback on because the bad rap that DAOs get is that DAOs do fuck all. They don't deliver. They just sit around and talk and burn their treasuries and they don't finish product. Maybe, but I don't think it's true. Even so, I think that good, healthy, well-guided, well-nourished, ignited process often delivers. The problem is, it doesn't necessarily deliver what it set out to accomplish, right? I believe that this is not a bad way to be, and I think the idea of DAOs is like Web3 companies. It's likely not gonna work, because DAOs are spaces of relatively empty but pregnant nature, right? You have a ill-defined set of constraints, and within there, what is ignited nurtures. And I think we should define language around this, and we should accept these spaces, or have more of these spaces of pregnant emptiness, right? And what is hard about expressing these spaces is that I can say but you probably feel the same way, have been thought to win alone, right? I am the author, I'm the winner, I'm the founder, I'm the star, get the Oscar, I'm the striker, I'm the creator, I wrote the article, I defined this and that. There is very little in ways of language to win collectively. Win collective is more beautiful. I think I will say win collective from now on. So what is hard about this conversation is how to share authorship and ownership due to highly collective processes, which is hard to quantify who did what, and have narratives of collective success. So this is the essence of the research of my action within the DAOist, who I happen to kind of be in the position to start, but it would not exist if it wasn't for all the other things that came along. So I choose, this is my avenue, this is my path of research, and if you want to talk about it, come talk to me, because I have ideas and I want to figure this out, right? So, premise is, whoever controls the narratives of success, of a well-lived life, whoever controls who is the coolest person in the room, that narrative, wins society. Or at least has more influence. And that we need ones that are collective. That's my premise. I don't have the answer for this. These are the contextual navigational polarities I'm looking at, which all trace back to identity and relationship. If you want to talk more about this later, I have a whole set of talks for you. But, and then there's like a moment of warning, like, pop, trigger warning. You have to do all of this with deep respect for corruption, the shadow work, evil, ambition, greed, the necessity to own and to feel like you have identity and power and manifest your will to power. And when out of control, these essences are what we call Moloch. So if you guys are Daoists, you probably heard this meme with Moloch at some point, right? So I need to put this here as a ritual practice to say, I respect you, Moloch. I am in conversation with you, and you will not win. But I know I cannot eradicate you. Right?
We can put it into the context of having tea with Moloch.
Yeah.
Instead of having tea with Mara.
I don't know having tea with Mara, but...
Mara is the shadow of the demons that you have to sit with.
Okay.
In the Buddhist philosophy.
Okay. Yeah, having tea with Mara, having tea with Moloch, inviting in these very possibly corrosive but very necessary aspects of the human condition, because it's about, there's no right answer, it's about navigating contextual polarities. This is what I'm interested in. This is the beginning of the talk, just to ground like what I'm looking at, and then I'll do a little bit of a run through of what has happened so far for the DAOs, and how we have been so lucky that this accidental one event in Paris became kind of a cultural boiling pot that we now steward, me, Inga, Luke, and a bunch of other people, and that you were invited to steward with. And we're all learning how to steward with, and I'll try to get to this point. So basically it started with an event in Paris, about 400, 500 people showed up, and it was very unassuming. And it created this very unique vibe, and people really liked it, and I was like, okay, that was fun, let's never do that again. And then Lisbon rolled around, and then people were like, you need to make another one. That was really dope. Like, it was different, it had a new vibe, like, do that again. And I was like, fuck no. And I was like, well, what if we give you more money this time? And then everybody kind of sponsored, and there was like an actual budget, and we rented like an actual space. And there was even some money left to buy a drone and take cool aerial shots and stuff. And so, but then we actually were invigorated, and we had enough kind of self-confidence to kind of challenge some of the staples of conferences. So yeah, our talk room is actually going to be super tiny, and everybody's going to watch talks in this giant LED screen. The one in the beginning that looks like a Photoshop picture, that's real. So this giant LED screen where everybody's on a table with their friends, like in a cabaret kind of a setup, and you can have your computer, and you don't have to be pretending that you're not on your phone, right? So we upended all of these traditions of what a conference is, and most of the thing was workshops. And we were like, this is what we're looking for all along. Because it was a bunch of people interacting. Okay, this is where I introduced the idea of the political drivers, blah, blah, blah. And then a bunch of people just working together and working at their DAOs and having ideas and pushing things forward. And a bunch of OGs and super experienced people like just taking up a mantle and just sharing knowledge in circle and moving their own tables because it was super hot inside the thing that we designed. Like, you know, we failed at some things and then people just self-corrected. So that was the deal, right? And then DAOist Mexico happened. Somebody who volunteered at the first one, which was Chewy, then became kind of team and then had his whole network in Mexico because he's from there. And he organized the DAOist that is as big as the first one in Mexico. And I got to go there. It was super beautiful. And it was awesome because day one before my talk, nobody knew who I was. And I'm not particularly attractive. I'm kind of chubby. I'm losing my hair. You know, so nobody wanted anything to do with me. And I was just walking around like, yeah, this is so cool. And there's like this heavy metal band playing. I was like, fuck. And they have a DAO. They're called Necromorpho. You can figure it out. Right? So DAOist has established itself as a crossroads, right? But we have this sequence of ephemeral events that we all come together for a second. We light a little fire. But it's not a hearth. It's not a permanent fire. Our permanent fires are like in the DAOs and the Discords, and it's like, okay, but we spend so much money to make these events, and they just go poof, in a puff of smoke. And I started like calculating how much money would it cost to actually have a permanent space where things were like just there, a hearth, a home, right? And it turns out it's the same price as like throwing 1.5 event for like a year of a space. So I was like, okay, I wrote a political document that is a little bit more inflammatory than it needed to be, and I passed it around, and people were like, yeah, you should do this. So we did it, right? We built the little house, and we built the little DAO, and it's not loading. So guys, this is all online, and there's recorded talks of this, so I'm kind of just rush through it to respect the specialness of the moment of us being together. So the DAO, I don't know, this is important. We should talk about this on the next panel. When you opened, you said, we're not a DAO because we don't have a token. You don't need a token, right? What we deployed is a set of interrelationship between a set of NFTs that can control any set of smart contract things in any chain you want as long as you build the bridge through Zodiac, right? So we still have so much to think about and what DAOs can do and how they would do it composably, but I'll leave this to the panel because also I feel it's nicer to do it in conversation. So we have this DAO, and everyone that has ever sponsored the DAOist got some governance on it, right? And hopefully, everyone that sponsors it to the future will also get governance on it if I do have time to do DAO ops, as I should, which I don't. But yeah, now we have a crypto culture incubator that is in a physical space that's completely equipped to manifest coordination. And you guys can come. Actually, you can apply for a residency. Say, I have a project, I want to develop this, I want to cooperate, I want to create a cooperation between this Guatemalan artist, this Slovakian lawyer, and this Ukrainian dev, and we're going to build this and this, and we want your crazy mind to facilitate our creative process. We want to go through crit sessions, we want to have it in a co-working space. We're all going to sleep in the same place, and it's better if it has a giant pool. Yeah, it's all there. Cool. So this is the house. It happened. You know, my favorite room is the garage because I'm building a multi-directional art atelier there. So you can paint, you can do ceramics, you can work with concrete and wood. So we can literally build things with our literal hands, which is an experience that I want to facilitate people who are building tech to have, right? If you're feeling that you're really, really awesome at life and that you're super badass and that you never do anything wrong and you're starting to irritate everyone around you, come center a block of clay with me. You will be humbled in more than 30 minutes, right? It's really hard. So yeah, we went through all the design things, we were building it all, now it's all built. And I woke up there the first night I slept at the Meetup Hub, and this is the view from the room. And I was like, okay, there's a path with heart here. We did something. I don't know yet, so please apply, please come, please tell your friends that this thing exists, and let's do some stuff there. And this is what I see from, if I look down from that window. And then this was our first meal there, everyone. And we're going to build a full-time communications team. So when you come in residency, we're actually documenting your work, why you do it. So we already published the thing. Because remember, stories are super mega important. And we are getting better and better at this in Web3, and I want to help. And then hopefully, we're going to have events that help the local groups like this one, to know more stuff. And hopefully you are also going to be throwing those events. So that's kind of the idea. Is it boring already? It is, right? I'm going to just skip the whole, this is the NFTs, the controlled things, it's cool, right? And then we're selling these DAO-specific sponsorships, which the 4 companies or collectives, let's just call them collectives, that are in the banner outside have taken the first 4. We have only 5 slots. We're closing the last one. And then we have all the ministries. These are the ambassadors, with how ignited they are. And then we have the ministries who are helping us ride Moloch successfully, following or guiding over the shooting star, whatever. Normal star shouldn't fall. If it falls, it will be a big deal. But it's mythology, who cares? There's still lots of those open that we're in conversation with lots of groups. It's the slowest raise, it's the most tantric raise in the history of mankind because it's about alignment, right? It's super cheap, it's 25K, any company can give. And there's a lot of them that want to give, but we want to build sort of the parliament for the DAOverse. This is the core team, which is 6 people right now. And then you have the elders. The elders are people who are invited from the community. I started at 12, and it's the first mission of the DAO, which is called Dawn, to actually curate and invite the next elders. So we have these 12 elders who actually I communicate with like quasi daily, and they helped a lot in the building of the DAO. And then we have our first like DAO approved elder, which is Loie from Giveth, which is super cool. Well, she's not Giveth anymore, Gitcoin. And it was super cool, and she was there, and she was at the lunch, she's at that picture, right? And now we have our next event that's coming on in Amsterdam, which will be a different one. It's a very exclusive event, not for beginners, only super experienced DAO operatives, which hurts a lot to do, but I think it's important because governance intimacy and how these first mega DAOs go through their growing pains, which are not small. If you have any penetration in the industry and you hear say, people are bleeding for these DAOs, emotionally, financially, and so we are going to create a very comfortable, which we call DAO Operatives Playground, for people to just be together and get to know, and co-work and co-produce, but also co-enjoy. So that's the whole thing of the Global Governance Gathering. As above, so below, flow over control. Lots of collective design happening on Figma boards and Miros and things like that. And okay, so this was for the Celo Connect event, but if you want to donate some Celo to our first multi-sig on Celo, because they were super excited that they built Celo Safe, so I just created one. I haven't checked actually if anybody threw any money in there. I will throw some. And then we can build some DAOs on Celo too, because I think it was super cool, the event that they put together yesterday. Really touched by the energy and the vibe of everything. So yeah, this is it. I'm sorry for the giving a talk. I don't know if it's, look actually, I was like, oh, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I hope it at least brings everybody up to speed on what we did and where we want to go. And if you want to like join us, this is a list from like low engagement to high engagement types of actions you can take, right? So if you take a picture, you can go like, I like them just this enough for this, and you pick one, and it will work. And that's it. Thanks.
Yeah.